Governor João Correia de Souza sits elevated in an ornate chair, flanked by officers in polished breastplates. Before him, a delegation from the Kingdom of Ndongo has arrived to negotiate peace. And at the front of that delegation stands a woman, draped in layered fabrics, beaded regalia, catching the dim light. A woman who is not yet queen, but who already understands power better than anyone in the room. She scans the chamber. There is one chair, his. For her, nothing. Not a bench, not a cushion, just the hard stone floor. The insult is deliberate. The message is clear. You will stand. You will look up. You will know your place. She does not flinch. She does not protest. Instead, she turns slightly, a gesture so subtle, the Portuguese barely register it, and one of her attendants steps forward, lowers to hands and knees, and becomes a seat. Nzinga Mbande sits. Slowly, deliberately, her eyes now level with the governor's. The room goes silent. She has said nothing, and she has said everything. To understand the woman in that room, you have to understand the world she was born into. Nzinga came into the ruling family of Ndongo, daughter of Ngola Kiluwanji, in the late 16th century, a kingdom already cracking under pressure. The Portuguese had established themselves along the Angolan coast, and their hunger was not for land alone. It was for people. The transatlantic slave trade was an engine, and Ndongo sat dangerously close to its gears. Raids pushed deeper inland every year. Villages vanished. Families were broken apart and marched in chains toward the coast, toward the ships, toward a horizon they would never return from. Nzinga grew up inside this slow catastrophe, but she was not raised to be a bystander. She learned languages. She studied diplomacy. She observed the rituals of statecraft, who spoke first, who sat where, who controlled the silences between words. By the time her brother, the reigning Ngola, sent her to Luanda as his envoy, she was not simply a messenger. She was a weapon sheathed in silk. And that treaty she secured in the governor's chamber? It was real. The Portuguese agreed to recognize Ndongo's sovereignty and withdraw from certain territories. Nzinga even accepted Christian baptism, taking the name Dona Ana de Sousa, not as an act of surrender, but likely a political chess move. The cross around her neck was likely as political as it was spiritual. It was a key, designed to open European doors that would otherwise remain locked to an African queen. But peace built on paper is only as strong as the hands that hold it. And the Portuguese had no intention of honoring theirs. The slave raids continued. Agreements were violated almost before the ink dried. Nzinga watched her careful diplomacy dissolve treaty by broken treaty, village by burned village. Then came a deeper blow. Her brother died under circumstances that remain unclear and debated, and Nzinga stepped forward to claim the throne of Ndongo. The opposition was immediate. She was a woman in a role tradition had not prepared for her. Rival factions circled. Portuguese agents whispered to anyone willing to listen that she was illegitimate, dangerous, controllable. She was none of those things, but the pressure was crushing from every direction. She had a choice: compromise and become a puppet ruler, propped up by Lisbon and hollowed out from the inside, or resist and risk the annihilation of everything she had fought to protect. Nzinga chose the fire. What followed was not a single dramatic battle. It was decades. Picture this: dense forest interior, far from the colonial forts on the coast. Nzinga, now in her 40s, moving through war camps with her commanders. She has allied herself with the Imbangala, fierce, feared warriors whose initiation rituals were brutal, whose loyalty was forged in blood. It was a controversial alliance. The Imbangala were not gentle partners, but Nzinga was not choosing comfort. She was choosing survival. Her warfare was unconventional guerrilla ambushes, calculated retreats, psychological tactics designed to exhaust and confuse. She never met the Portuguese where they were strongest. She struck where they were thinnest and vanished into terrain they could not navigate. She dictated letters to European officials that read like the correspondence of an empress, measured, literate, laced with legal reasoning. She fought with muskets and with sentences. And when Ndongo finally became untenable, when Portuguese pressure forced her from her homeland, she did not collapse. She marched west into the kingdom of Matamba, seized control, and rebuilt. From scratch. A new capital, new alliances, new trade routes. She transformed Matamba into a fortified state, organized and disciplined, capable of standing when Ndongo could not. By the 1640s, Nzinga had become something the Portuguese never anticipated, a regional power broker. When the Dutch Portugal's European rivals arrived on the Angolan coast looking for allies, Nzinga was ready. She played European empires against each other with the precision of a diplomat who had spent a lifetime reading rooms. Dutch guns flowed into Matamba, Portuguese supply lines frayed. For a brief, electric moment, it seemed as though the colonial project in Angola might genuinely weaken. It didn't. The Dutch withdrew. Alliances shifted. The Portuguese regrouped. But Nzinga was still standing older now, her hair greying, her body carrying the weight of 30 years of war. And she was still commanding, still negotiating, still refusing to kneel. She never fully drove the Portuguese from her lands. The slave ships did not stop sailing. The forts along the coast did not crumble. If you measure victory by total triumph, then Nzinga's story falls short. But total triumph was never the option on the table. What was on the table was erasure, and she refused it. For 40 years, through war and exile and reinvention, she held a space open for her people's autonomy in a world that was systematically closing every door. She bent without breaking. She adapted without disappearing. She wore the cross when it served her and drew the sword when it didn't. And she never once confused compromise with surrender. In that governor's chamber, in 1622, whether literal or shaped by legend, a woman without a chair found a way to sit as an equal. And for the rest of her life, no matter what was taken from her, her homeland, her peace, her allies, no one ever managed to take that. The refusal to be made less, the insistence, quiet and absolute, that she would meet the world on her own terms. Some legacies are not built on conquest. They are built on the stubborn, relentless act of enduring, and Nzinga endured more fiercely than almost anyone who has ever lived. And maybe that's the real lesson her story leaves behind. Power is not something you are given, it's something you create, even in rooms designed to diminish you. Survival is not passive. It demands constant adaptation, the willingness to change strategies without losing yourself. And legacy isn't always about winning. Sometimes it's about refusing to disappear. If this story moved you, subscribe. There are more voices like hers, buried, forgotten, waiting. We'll find them together.